Hello again, world. Continuing from X's story here, the recap summary is that the environment and the situation is pretty much all in the gray area for X, of it being the capabilities and the competency of the rep, the client, the network technology infrastructure, and the time to keep troubleshooting under the 10 to 15 minute uh, before escalating to senior reps. So the situation is that when a typical client calls in, if they are not as technology savvy to understand what it is their problem is, it's the job of the rep to ask probing questions to find out what exactly is the user's issues. And being in that field, X will tell you that you should never trust the customer because you never know what they're saying or they're describing. You have to either jump on the screen to see for yourself, and that in itself is part of the issue as well with remote troubleshooting and trying to help customers and clients that's in several states away on a computer. You got to make sure that the infrastructure is set up correctly, functional, and it works. Whether you're using the program from a main server to try to shadow, or if you're using other third-party to remote in and see the user screen to assist them, whether or not you're able to connect to their workstation due to firewalls or due to network issues or just due to wrong settings when these systems are being set up out in the field to be supported. So if one method doesn't work, then the rep has to go through to see if they can find another alternative to be able to hop on the screen to find out what exactly is the issue for the user. And each of these methods and different troubleshooting methods takes time. And it takes more time when the rep is trying to explain this in layman terms to the common user who's not as technology savvy. So with that, just asking the probing questions and trying to see and identify the problem is already in the 5 to 7 minute time frame. And sometimes with it being as simple as maybe a reboot to solve the issue, if the systems that the users themselves were on weren't so old and decrepit or weren't so low in specifications that they take 5 to 10 minutes to start up, or if they had some better processors, RAM, just systems specifications to have newer workstations instead of used computers that's in rotation every 5 to 6 years. So with that being the case, the representative has to deal with infrastructure problems in addition to equipment problems and users that's not as technology savvy, and sometimes just trying to figure out the issue of identifying the problem before solving it takes more than that 10 to 15 minutes. And after the 10 to 15 minutes of troubleshooting, if X is told that X cannot spend more than 10-15 minutes troubleshooting to escalate, then just about the majority of the tickets will be escalated. So that kind of defeats the purpose of the first call resolution or trying to solve the problem on the first call. So it just depends on the ticket, the situation, the type of problem, and trying to deduce those problems. Now, if everything worked in the ideal world where each time the user called in and the infrastructure and the firewall was set so that the representative could connect every single time, then that would drastically cut down the troubleshooting to be able to hop onto the user screen to find out what exactly is the issue, whether it's printing, not able to open an application, support for an application, logging on issues, network issues, connectivity issues, firewall, or just other technology computer related issues. It definitely would knock out the time. Having faster workstations could definitely save up on the 5 to 10 minutes it takes for the workstation to start up with the dead time of waiting for that, especially if it takes several reboots if the system's trying to be upgraded. So that's pretty much the scenario and situation, the gray area that X has to work with here. So X is describing that to exemplify in the story that the situation has so many different criteria of infrastructure, equipment, user, the time, the representative's own technological skills and competency. But in the end, it always ends up being that X is the one that's blamed for the issue in troubleshooting or the situation when time is spent too long, or when X doesn't resolve enough calls, or when X doesn't close enough first calls on a first call basis, or X can't help client and always escalating due to time or due to network issues of trying to help and trying to provide customer satisfaction. So with that being the case, there's, in that scenario, commenting here, if I was in X's position, that's basically 4 criteria that adds to the whole of the situation and the problem. But yet when something goes awry, it turns out that in that case, X is always the one that's blamed. And because it's a black and white issue, because it's a gray matter issue, it's pretty much shades of gray. It's not, alright, you need to spend more than 10-15 minutes, or no, after that, you have to escalate it over, or no, you need to determine the problem, or you have to ask the right questions. But yet for every single different customers and clients, they have different technology skill levels of what they understand of how you're trying to explain it to them, or how you're trying to ask them questions to probe them out. So if I was in that situation, you can't say that the 3 probing questions that you ask of one client you can understand when you ask another that's not as technology savvy, or they don't have the exact same issue. So that really can't apply to that. So it's a gray matter there, and then they call it that it's also a judgment issue as well. So it's a judgment issue with 4 to 5 criteria depending on what judgment you take. If you can defend your judgment, there's going to be petty back talk, and in this case X is being called out because of a wrong judgment call, when it's X's judgment call to determine what's the best method considering the time, the complexity, just the situation it takes to try to resolve that particular situation. No single call is ever the same. So with that being the case, I guess I'll go into the next video, or the next segment.